So as Mo said, we're going to talk about the mentoring program today. We have a lot of different information to share. Mo did a little bit of a background on us. I'll go ahead and just give you a little bit more information about sort of my trajectory here in law enforcement. And I wish I was still at 32 years, but I'm up to 34. I did start at Lowell PD as a civilian and worked in Central Massachusetts as a sworn officer, and began consulting to organizations from across the country, doing lots of different services, anything from policy, procedure review, IAs, and district boundaries assessment, and a lot of community engagement. And throughout all of my career and the things that I've seen through my consulting is really a lack of support for women in policing. I had a great opportunity to team up with one of the co-founders of NOLI back in 2011, 2010 timeframe, and she, told me about NOLI and the things that she had been doing with NOLI, and I had the opportunity to do a little bit of work for NOLI back then, and was really grateful to be selected to be the executive director back in 2018. One of my passions about what I do now is definitely being able to work with organizations to recruit and retain more women and create programs that would really begin to change how women are viewed in the profession. So I'm excited to share that with you today. I'll let Shannon give a little bit more about her background before we get into the presentation.
Thanks, Kim, and good afternoon, everybody. I am the current Deputy Chief of the Professional Standards Division with Noblesville Police Department in Indiana. I'm also the current First Vice President of NOLI. I'll assume our presidency here in about, oh gosh, Kim, like a week. That's crazy. I've been with this agency for 19 years. Prior to Noblesville, I started down at Indiana University, so a little bit of university experience. Throughout my career, I've done multiple things, held different positions in patrol. I was an FTO supervisor, a hostage negotiator, hostage negotiation commander, was the deputy chief over investigations for a couple years, and about 12 years into my career, I started to get promoted. I was a sergeant, became a lieutenant, and in the agency I'm in, where I am, there were no females in leadership positions. So I started to look around and I thought, there really is nobody who looks like me and who's on the track that I am in my career. So I got online and I started to find that there had to be people and somebody who could share their career and assist in mine. And I found NOLI. So I've been with NOLI now for about 9 years. In NOLI, because of how my career came up, my passion is in mentoring. It's what I'm passionate about. I enjoy it. I love watching people that I can help develop succeed. So I took over in NOLI the chairperson of the mentorship committee. So that's kind of how I got involved with NOLI. And then currently my position I'm in, our mentoring program for my agency falls under me as well. So that's a little bit about me, and I look forward to the webinar.
Thanks, Shannon. So for mentoring for success, just to put it in perspective, we've got some different numbers that we'll share, and just like data in general, not everyone's numbers exactly align, but I think what you'll see is that while mentoring is said to be really valuable for folks, and a lot of folks, 55% believe that it would help them succeed, and that they're looking for experience in a mentor, but as Sage says, they have only, a short number, 15% of folks that actually have a mentor. So like Shannon mentioned, with her trajectory, not a lot of mentors around. And for myself, it was really the same, coming into this profession back in the 80s, there weren't a lot of women that were in the profession. There might be, close peers, but not a lot of women of rank before us. And so, thinking about mentoring back then and who could be our mentors was a little bit different. And when we talk about, how we have to move forward with mentoring for the policing profession is, we have to realize as women, we're outnumbered. And so it might be at certain times that men actually become not just a mentor, but an advocate for us. And we'll delve into that a little bit more. But in corporate America, it's really shown to be a positive. If we look at corporations, 67%, so round that up to 70% of businesses saying that productivity increases when there's a mentoring program in place. We can align that to our profession. Think about how early we begin to lose folks in our profession, right? We get them through the FTO, and then we all know things start to change a little bit, the 3 to 5 year mark. And then after the 5 year mark, people tend to not be as enthusiastic about policing as they were when they got into their law enforcement career. So mentoring can be a way to keep folks, tracking in a positive way. We do a lot of effort with training in the beginning of careers, you support in the academy, but then what happens after that? And we fall off. We are now starting to talk about things like peer support, but that's really different than mentoring. So being able to institute a mentoring program can really mean a lot for your agency, and for the mental health and wellness of your employees by giving them that support network. So here, just, another statistic, again, not all statistics align, but of people, thinking about mentoring, 76% think that they're important, but just such a low number. Even if this was 40%, that's not enough. And so our mentoring program or other individual mentoring programs are really important to have. So, just from folks in the session today, is there a way to get a little bit of a take from you all in the chat on how many of you actually have a mentoring program in place, a formal mentoring program in place for your agency at this time? So I can't see because I've got my screen up, so we do have to use the chat function. So Terry, can you just tell me CPD? Thank you. So say CPD could be a lot. So Charleston PD, you have a formal one. Great. Anyone else have a formal program in place? Which agency is that?
Hartford Police Department.
Hartford. Okay, great. Thanks. And so Tanya, at New York, you've got something for sergeants, but it's more of an orientation. So I think that's a lot what we see, that we do an orientation. We might do some agency socialization, but not the mentoring. All right. Des Moines, Iowa. Okay. So seems like we've got a couple in play, a couple that are just starting out, some that don't have any, and interesting. Tanya, I'd love to hear from you a little bit. The police reform mandate, saying that you've got to have that. Do you have a performance due date on that? Did they say any particular model?
So no, it was really kind of strange. It came out about, as overall police reform, New York State, it's referred to as Executive Order 203. So it was sufficiently vague and said that the NYPD must develop a mentoring program for police officers from underrepresented communities early in their careers. And that's all it said. So we've been working with an outside consultant to help us develop that. At the same time, we were already considering a formal program for the NYPD as it was. It just now has been layered with this mandate that is, as I said, vague.
Okay. So hopefully, we can add some value to that as well. And, when we start talking about the different types of mentor programs, that might, get your thoughts moving as well. So thanks everyone for sharing. But the value of mentors, I'll talk a little bit about what it was like for me. And I know Shannon could probably expand a little bit for her, but, when we look back on our careers, or even external things that we do outside of policing, I think that we all can reflect and say that people were influential to you and, had that role in shaping what you did, how you act, career choices that you made. And so when I think back, like I said, there weren't a lot of women of rank to really think about emulating. There were some peers, but they were as green as I was. And then, here in Massachusetts, I think when I started, there might have been 2 women police chiefs, and there was a bunch of men, and I was really fortunate to have some advocates that helped kind of show me the way, let me understand what my strengths were and where I didn't have the best strengths in policing, so that I could help navigate what I was going to do. And so for agencies that don't have a lot of women, there's some other options too, and Shannon can expand on how the NOLI mentoring program works as we go through this. But sometimes a formal internal program might not be the best way to go, and so there's some workarounds of how we can get mentors in place for organizations that might not be as big as NYPD, to have a formal internal one. Of course, every organization but them, is smaller, right? So we've got so many small and mid-sized organizations that you might not have the bandwidth internally to create your own program, and hopefully that's where NOLI can help. Shannon, you want to pull in any of additional experiences there?
Yeah, for me, I had kind of a unique experience coming into my agency. There was a female of rank, and I think joining, the agency, I was looking for somebody to kind of be a mentor. Of course, you don't realize that now, but then that's what I was looking for, and I walked through the door, and all I knew, there were 2 female officers that had been here for about 15 years. So keep in mind, this is now 40 years ago. They're now retired. But I knew as soon as I walked in the door, the word was, you can't align yourself with them if you want to succeed in your career. So the stories around, were that they weren't good officers, that they didn't have good tactics, that they were just officers that weren't going to, I knew in order to survive, I had to separate myself from them. Of course, I learned 10, 12 years into my career that they were good officers. They just had the same battles that we all have, and especially in mid-sized agencies and sometimes smaller agencies. So I kind of learned my survival was to stay away from them. So that kind of hindered me. And then I think that propelled me towards mentors that weren't really good mentors. So that's a hindrance if you don't have a good mentor program and you haven't identified the officers that you want to mentor. I was being mentored by officers that probably weren't good mentors. So I battled that probably the beginning of my career. But like Kim's talking about with NOLI, when I got online and decided, enough is enough, I've got to find something, I need to make this better, because that's what I wanted to do for my agency. You're not going to have in smaller or mid-sized agencies, and even in some large agencies, you're not going to have all the mentors that somebody might need, that's on the same career path or what they're looking to achieve in their career. But if you don't have it, go find it. So there are places like NOLI, other organizations, and who have mentor programs. So like Kim said, to Kim's point, you might not need to develop your own formal program, but you can reach out and we can share mentors, right? Because we're all in it together. We're all trying to help each other. So I think those connections and that networking is a big part that NOLI can play.
Kim, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Did we lose Kim?
Thank you, Mo, for giving me the unmute button because it disappeared as Shannon was talking, and I had to drop the slideshow in order to try to get back. So I'm not going to unmute myself again. So we'll pick back up. Apologize for that. Can you all hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. All right. So what we're talking about is the value of our mentors. They can help us see they've been there before, navigating that course, whether it's about career advancement, specialization, difficulties that we might encounter. There's value in mentors for a variety of different reasons. And no matter where we are in our career, we can use a mentor. So whether it's onboarding, whether it's mid-career, or whether it's, as we start to step away from our law enforcement careers and what are we going to do next? There's always people that can be there to help you through the process. And as mentees, our role is really to open ourselves up and be vulnerable. And, in our profession, we're just really starting to talk about that, right? Is to be open about where our gaps are and how we can fill those and be really ready to ask the questions of how do I make myself better at this point today? Yes, I might be really great at one part of the job. Maybe I need improvements in other areas. Maybe there's, attitudes and beliefs around me that are holding me back. And how do I get over that? How do I, sort of separate myself out from those that might be disgruntled? In the LPO, the Leadership and Police Organization course with IACP, we talk about, where people are at their careers, and we have like adventurers and we have vacationers, and then we kind of have the hostages. And the people that are in the middle can drag us down, right? They can pull us out. But if we have a mentor and we're really striving to be all that we can be in our profession and in our personal lives, making this job the very best that it can be, we can really use the strength of our mentors to change our trajectory in the career, and also change how we are acting as mentors to others, right? You never know the influence that you have over somebody else. So it's very much like effective followership, right? We have our leaders and we need to be following those leaders and then being a leader to those that are around us. So it's really becomes this full circle cycle. So talking about the type of mentoring programs, the formal and the informal. So sounds like some of you are at the starting stages of a formal program. We've heard from a lot of agencies across the country and a lot of women that it's informal. You kind of set your sights on somebody that has skills or experiences that you think would help in your career, so you connect to them. Internal and external. So I, talk a little bit about agencies that don't have enough women to really have a mentoring program that would be applicable internal for them. So for NOLI, we do everything that is external. Folks come to us as an association and we pair them with folks. It might be local, but mostly the preference has been for folks from other organizations. And then your agency could do a hybrid one. Certainly the academy-based, where someone's coming in and acting on behalf of the organization to really make sure that the investment in that cadet is seen to its fullest and that they make it through the academy. There's those of us that through our career, we create a self-directed where we might be looking for something that somebody else has. So, for someone that is leaving the law enforcement career, you might find someone else that has left. Or maybe you need to advance out of your agency because you want to be that, next step up. Maybe you want to be a major or a deputy chief or even a chief, and that's not going to be possible within your organization because of those that are before you and when they're thinking about retirement. And so you've got to think about what you want to do next. And then there's the coaching aspect, which is really different than the mentoring. So a coach is not acting as your mentor, not acting as your guide point, but someone that's really pushing you to discover yourself. And it's just a little bit of a different approach than the mentoring. You're not looking to learn from their experience or their expertise in policing. You're looking for them. They are external to policing to kind of coach you along in most cases. And then we have the peer support program. And I think there's a lot of confusion right now in the profession where folks are substituting mentoring with the words peer support, and that, we're part of the NOLI's part of the Collaborative Reform Technical Assistance Center. Someone might call up and be talking about mentoring at first, but then we find out what they really want is peer support. And so the peer support program is, not developed in the same way as the mentoring. It doesn't have the goals and strategies and objectives step forwards or formalized check-ins. And a lot of peer support is based on critical incidents or someone not feeling well and reaching out. So just a little bit different there. Shannon, you want to expound or expand at all on these different types, or how you see the NOLI mentoring program fitting in a bit for the organizations that are on the call today?
I was just going to add just a little bit to add to that, Kim, is the peer support. To your point, I do the intake calls, or I did for a long time, for our mentoring, and it's surprising. It was surprising to me a little bit. A lot of times after being on the phone with somebody, when I do that initial call for about an hour to an hour and a half, you really are trying to figure out what they need. They think it's mentoring, but to Kim's point, a lot of times after an hour, hour and a half on the phone, I think they just feel better, and that's what they needed, was somebody else outside of their agency who might have shared the same experiences, and honestly just to vent. And then we kind of get to, is the formal, mentoring program what they need that NOLI offers, or is there somebody that I can just connect them with that would be a coach or in a peer support, or is there a direction I can point them? But I think it's extremely important to figure out what fits their needs as well, and not enter them into a program that I don't think they're looking for. So that's all I was going to add, Kim.
Great. Thanks, Shannon. So Mo, I want to do a little pulse check with you, because I am not going to go off screen again to try to look at the chat. Is there anything that's coming up that folks want us to address at this point before we continue?
Nope, you're good.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So mentor roles. So note to self, I need to put a sign outside my office for that motorcycle that keeps going up and down. I apologize for that. So the mentor roles, they're acting as that guide and the advisor. Mentors really have to have a high level of knowledge of their agency or the profession, so that you can impart that into the life of the mentee, and providing that assistance for the personal growth. Mentors are really striving to get their mentees to get that highest level of success that's possible. And the other part is really creating a relationship that makes both parties benefit. So what's really interesting, if you've ever acted as a mentor, you know this, that it really helps you too, right? Is that as you're able to help be that guiding light or that beacon for someone else, it can reinvigorate you in your career as well. When you know that what you've done to prepare yourself for your role and your position and kind of your space in this profession, that you can pass that along to the next generation of folks, or even a peer, can be really fulfilling. And the other part of that too is that when you're a mentor, it doesn't mean that you're not at the same time being a mentee. So you can be mentoring somebody while someone else is mentoring you. Especially, for example, if someone has a very specialized job within an organization and someone wants to have a specialized job, you could be mentoring them while at the same time reaching out to have someone mentor you for a career advancement or getting into a different silo of the profession. So, both roles can be occurring at the same time. And that's, all about that continuous improvement process and growth and development. So the attributes of mentors, when you think about the people that have been influential for you, it could be a variety of things that attracts you to that mentor relationship. Their ability to always stay bright and positive. I just kind of gave Shannon an analogy to someone that's always bright and positive today. Just when I said to Shannon, whenever I talk to that person, you just feel great because they always have a good attitude. And so if you're in an agency that's having some morale problems and you need someone to keep you positive about law enforcement, that's an attribute that you really want to talk about. The level of trust is really important, especially if someone's going through something difficult in an organization. And this is where those hybrid approaches to mentoring can be really important. Within a large organization, different districts or boroughs, it might not be as important to say an agency that has 65 or 70 members, and the mentee wants to talk about difficulties that they're having in the profession. They don't most likely want to share that with someone within their organization, right? They could sit on an interview later in their career, and they wouldn't want that person to have that insight, into what they might have been thinking. And so the mentor attributes, we could fill up a whole page, and that's, just a few to share. But as Shannon was talking about with the interview process that goes on, is you really need to be thinking about what you bring to the table as a mentor, because we have applications for both mentors and mentees. And then as a mentee, you've got to be thinking about what the skills are. What is that knowledge, skills, and ability? What type of person do you need brought into your life to enrich your career? And it's not just about checking a box. It's intentionally thinking about what it is that you need, what are your goals, and then there's a goal setting process within the mentoring arrangement, and all of those things come to light. On the mentee side, it really runs the gamut, as I've mentioned. It can be someone that's just interested in the field. We get those calls a lot, where they're thinking about entering the career. Maybe they're in criminal justice, and they're wanting to figure out what kind of agency that they go to. They can be someone that just wants to advance. We hear so much about the new employee, and I mentioned the academy-based programs where the agency matches someone without a choice. So that mentee can be being mentored to someone that might not actually fit. So you need to think about that. And really just thinking about as the mentee, and as you're creating your program, creating that space for the mentees to bring about, if they're new employees, that enthusiasm, be able to share that, bright and shiny penny feel. We all know what that was like early in our career. And for many of us that started when I did, that was not really embraced. And so we have to think about the generational differences in what these mentees do bring to the table and what our organizations can learn from them. So if you have a formal program and it's internal to your organization, you can learn a lot by analyzing what the mentees are asking for. It can show you gaps in your training. It can show you gaps in how you're presenting your organization to the community. If they're asking similar questions or have similar concerns about their career, it can be really insightful. Shannon, I don't know if you can share just a little bit about the program that you're using to kind of track matches and mentees, and how you can kind of glean some information from programs that you're using like you are.
Yeah, I wanted to touch on just the mentor attributes. To your point, Kim, when I did my own agency one, I reached out to the mentees and some of the officers I had even lost throughout my FTO process and at different times. And I wanted to know what they thought was important in a mentor. The thought process of some people were that a mentor needed to have X amount of time on, or they needed to have X amount of experience within the agency, or they had to have some super specialty. And what I found out that they wanted and that they needed, and that I think makes the best mentors, is exactly what we have on here. They wanted somebody with a positive attitude who understood where they were coming from if they messed something up, or if they had a silly question, or somebody who listened to them really well, and then somebody who they could trust, that was not going to betray their trust. So I think that's extremely important when you're picking a mentor and when you're developing your mentor program. We had at some point mentors that were kind of voluntold to be mentors, which is always going to be not a good mentor if they were told that that's what they were going to do. So I think building that program with the right people. Some of my best mentors on my own agency have 2 to 3 years on the agency. They know enough to give somebody good advice, but again, what they're focusing on is listening, those good attitudes, and when someone has a question, they go out and find it. So for my program within my agency, I use I worked with a local vendor to come up with a mentor software. We have software for everything in law enforcement, but when I took over the program and took my current position, I needed to know, and then with Nolly as the chairperson, you develop this program and then you need to know if it's working. And if it's not working, you need to know what's not working. And then if you find what's not working, how do you fix it? So I have worked with a local company to develop a software where I can put in my mentors, my mentees, they can set their goals, they track their not conversations, but contacts, just how and when they reach out to them. I track their careers, and then I have that formal start date, formal end date. I track their training. And then most importantly, to Kim's point, when I'm pulling information out of that system, I can tell, you'd be surprised, the more you put in it, the more you can pull out, but you can kind of tell if a pairing might not be working. Maybe, and again, you think you match people up in the best way, but sometimes they just don't connect. So we've reached out to mentors and mentees both. I have my coordinator reach out if they don't seem to have a lot of contact, and sometimes they'll just say, we really didn't connect and we really didn't click. So then we pull them and we find another mentor. So I am using that software system that seems to be helping. We were doing things before. I was kind of logging on Excel sheets and other things where we were plugging and playing, but that has seemed to work for me. But it's important with your program to have a way to analyze and pull information from it to judge successes and to have things to report back.
Shannon, real quick, there's the question in the chat. What are there concerns from mentors or mentees about privacy and confidentiality in using that software?
There are. So, and there was my concern, to be honest with you, in developing it. It was mine, because again, that high level of trust and not sharing those, interpersonal things. So basically all I have them track is reached out via text, reached out via phone, reached out via coffee break or something. They don't track any of the conversations that they had with that employee, and both the mentee and the mentor have access to that program, so they can see what's in there and look at it. But it really is more, tracking goals, changing goals, why a goal changed. And then I'm trying to integrate it into my training program, so I can, if my mentee has different things they want to do throughout their career, I want the mentor to know what those are, to then consult with training division to make sure that our training is matching what's going to make them successful in their career. So all that software stuff, if I'm trying to approve a training and I know this mentee is on that career track, I'm more likely to approve it for them versus another officer. So I'm trying to get it to work all together throughout the agency. But yes, to answer the question, concerns, we don't put anything in there other than the match itself and the number of contacts that would be considered in any way confidential.
Super helpful. Thank you. And then a follow-up question. What's the name of the software system that you're using?
So we have a vendor, it's Agency 360. However, side note, I don't know, it's in a beta testing, so it's not ready to roll yet, but I'm
gonna take the plastic off the ring.
Listen, it's been a long time coming. It's been years and years. Kim, how long did I do the mentor for Nolly? 2 to 3 years. And I thought, this is a need that we have. And I looked and I went out to look and I researched and there was all this software, but it had to do for corporate business and massive.
You gotta do the stretch, babe.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where I'm at, but hopefully that's up and rolling soon and can be useful to other agencies as well as Nolly.
Excellent. Thank you. And Shannon, if folks have specific questions about that software, do you mind if they reach out to you directly?
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much.
So on that software, I would think, after the countless meetings that Shannon had individually, and then we had some joint meetings, obviously Shannon was having it built for her agency, and we've asked them to, once they get through the testing, to make it available to Nolly on a platform that we could use for cross-agency mentoring. Certainly, I would think that if there's more folks that want to use it, Shannon, that would probably be good to have some additional conversations as they're doing the beta test. Not to speak for the company, but we really want this software to work for multiple agencies, and obviously to have it work for Nolly for some cross-agency work too. So Mo, I'm seeing the screen back now with some additional clicks on there. I saw it went from 4 to 6. So are there more things in the chat? that we should talk about?
Yeah, actually, Terry, do you mind unmuting and sharing a little bit about how you're using Power DMS to do this?
Sure. So we have a mentor program. I guess it's kind of like the thing you're talking about in the academy. We do it as soon as they get hired. It's run through the recruitment and retention unit. So we have people apply to be mentors and go through an interview process. And then Stephanie Rao, who's our background investigator / mentor, facilitator, she puts the mentor information kind of in a spreadsheet, and then we track if they've been in contact with their mentee and how many times, et cetera, through Power DMS. So they send out like a survey. Have you been in contact? Who are your mentees? When did you contact them, et cetera? If not, why not? But we don't, capture any information they talk about. We just build the relationship and introduce them. And then it's their job to get together and talk about whatever makes them comfortable. The mentorship program ends after they get cut loose for independent duty, but if they want to continue it forward, they're also allowed and able to do that. But the hopes are that they'll network with, interdepartmentally and build their own mentors throughout their careers in the agency once they start to get introduced and network and get to know people.
Super helpful. Thank you so much for hopping in. And Tanya, I know you noted that you're testing a software called Together. Is it a little bit too early to share anything from that, or is there anything you want to share with the group?
It's a bit too early and it might be cost prohibitive. So I'd certainly love to learn more from others that are already invested in software, whether that might be an option for us.
Great. Thank you. All right, Kim, it's all yours.
Okay. So, I love it when we start having more conversation than just looking at the slides. So I'm going to click through some slides, but I want to really just open it up for more discussion like this. I think, sharing what other folks are doing can be really of interest to all of us. But, just quickly, I'll go through again, the differences, the coach and the FTO. So for the coaching process that are linked to the FTOs, not coaching that we go out to get from external sources. But the key thing in that middle bullet, the authoritative position that they're in. So, the FTO process, and we've got another slide on that as well. So that's sort of their first entree into the organization itself, unless of course you have your own department academy. But that FTO process, if you don't have a mentoring program, starts to become a de facto mentoring process, because that's the job of the FTO, to train and develop and evaluate that person. And thing about it, of course, is that it's assigned. So sometimes it might not match very well. So while FTO is not a mentoring process, as supervisors, people have to be on the lookout for that. If there is an FTO that's just not meshing with their trainee, there's got to be some decision making on part of the organization. I know a lot of agencies have the liberty to rotate FTOs in and out, that the trainee is going through many FTOs. Some of our smaller and mid-sized organizations don't have that liberty or latitude. So if that is an exposure to sort of that coaching, mentoring part of your FTO, just be cognizant of that there can be times when there's just a mishmash, and even if that FTO is skilled, it just might not be working for that mentee. So our different mentors that we have, we want them to be influential, share their knowledge, that availability piece, with agencies tracking the amount of contacts, someone has to be available. So you have to, when you're screening your mentors, make sure that they are available for that. If someone is super busy, it might not be that they're the best match at that time. Making sure that they can really fulfill their commitments is going to be one of your success factors. And so let's just talk about some of these success pieces. So we talked about similar interests, that if someone has a specialized field that they want to go into, that's a really important piece, rather than just giving them a general mentor. Making sure that your mentors that you have within your organization are ones that are valued by both the administration and the agency itself. You making sure that there's ways that you can monitor what's going on without having that privacy issue. You can have sort of anonymous surveys too, to just see, how things are going in general, without sharing those contents of the conversations, which are really super important to have. The structured program piece, again, if you're doing a formal program, that will be built in. If you're having to do a cross agency one, and we hope that you do consider having Nolly help you with that, so that there is that ability to have some level of accountability. As we mentioned, we're trying to get that software so that it will work for cross agency, and that we at Nolly would have that for your use, hopefully sooner than later. So again, making sure that your mentors have those personal experiences, they have the knowledge base within policing to really share. Make sure you do a really extensive interview with those mentors. A lot of times people want to be mentors, and they've had some negative experiences either with their agency, or just sort of with life, and someone would think, well, that's not really a good one to have be a mentor. But you've really got to explore, did that mentor have something go wrong, but then they were able to correct it? Were they able to learn from their experiences? Because that can be really valuable to the mentee as well. The biggest thing on here is really the targeted goals. Oftentimes, if people are just mentoring for the social aspects, or the mentee is sort of grasping at what they need, it's not going to be successful. And that's why we talked about a few slides back of sort of that interview of what the mentee really needs, really being concrete. And as Shannon said, sometimes they don't really want the mentor, they just need some peer support, they just need someone to talk to, and that's okay too. But you don't want to set them up with a mentor if they really just had that limited obstacle that was in front of them, and they just needed a little bit of career guidance. You don't want to go through all of those steps to get them paired up if that's not actually what they need. So obviously, as we go through the program, there are ones that just are not going to work. There's a multitude of reasons why. Someone could have a very illustrious career, but just for whatever reason, personalities don't mesh. If you have someone that is, a super extrovert and matched with someone that's an introvert, it might be harder for them to connect. Conversely, if you have two extroverts, that might not work either. We just never know. There's so many different types of ways to figure that out by the questions that you ask, so for your intake form to be pretty thorough, again, with your mentor and your mentee, getting those expectations. The other thing is, and this is more in the corporate world, is the corporate programs, as Shannon mentioned, the tracking programs there were so rigid and based on corporate goals and outcomes, that it might not really work with law enforcement. There has to be that flexibility to shape the match, shape the goals and objectives and the strategies that are used based on that person, based on the shift that they work. You can't set down strategies that have to be done, at a certain time of the day, or meetings have to take place during the day. And the other thing that you have to think about is on agency time versus off agency time. That could be an obstacle as well. You just really think about those things. And then, as we have explored some of the mentoring programs, when there's diversity, that someone of diverse backgrounds, whether it's a cross-gender match, and even today with communities of color, they might be having issues that are not something that the mentor has experienced. So again, it's really about the conversations that you have about what folks are trying to accomplish and what things they're trying to overcome within their career or successes that they want to have.
Kim, real quick, related to that, Tanya asked in the chat, what are your thoughts on civilian uniform mentorships?
So that question gets asked a lot. I'll give my thoughts and then I'll have Shannon weigh in. So it really, from my perspective, depends on what the person wants out of it. So if there's civilians within the organization that want to become sworn, that's, for me, an obvious yes. Match them up with someone, find someone in your organization. If you have someone that's in your records division, or if you have civilian dispatchers and they want to switch over, I think that's, amazing. And then I think about some of the women that are civilians in large organizations, right? You've got, Philadelphia has Blake Norton as a civilian in that organization. Now, what person wouldn't want to be, connected to Blake, given her experiences with major cities and what they've seen? So if someone wanted to move up, say from a lieutenant or a deputy position to a chief, a civilian like Blake has worked within policing, within the foundation, that she has a different perspective of what managers and municipalities look for in their leaders. So I think she could be an amazing mentor to someone that wants to advance in their career. So again, it's all on what the person wants. And if it's about making it through an organization as a female, I don't see why the match wouldn't work. But Shannon, what are your thoughts and perspectives?
That's kind of what I was going to say, Kim. I've got a female admin assistant who's been here for 27 years, I believe. And if you want to know anything about anything and how to survive and what to do and she is the person to go to. So we haven't really talked about kind of, male mentors and female, but when I start my females, when I assign them a mentor at the beginning, I always make sure I give them a female mentor. So to me, the civilian versus sworn would be less important than I make sure I assign them to a female mentor. So if that is what you have and they are good mentors, because again, you go back to the things that make a good mentor. It's if you don't know how to get the information, go find it. The attitude, the willingness to help, the positivity, the trustworthiness. I think it's more about those traits than it is about a uniform or not a uniform. So again, it would depend on what, like to Kim's point, what that person, what part of their career they're in and what they need and what their path is. But for the better part of a lot of things, I don't see any issues with that at all. And I think it's a fantastic idea.
Great. Thank you so much. Right, back to you, Kim. Thanks.
Great. So just, many of you are in the process. Some of you might be thinking about it. Just some questions. It's really just delving into what you want for your organization, evaluating your organization in terms of depth of staff, time availability for staff, whether you can have an internal program, whether you need a hybrid. We can certainly be a sounding board for you, but that's some work that you've got to do within. Thinking about who will facilitate your program. Now, Shannon has a coordinator for her program. She could talk a little bit about how she made that choice. But again, that's going to tie into what outcomes are you trying to seek? Do you need co-facilitators, right? If you are trying to retain your women in your organization and it's just a male facilitator, maybe that's not going to work. Do you have to pull somebody out of HR within your municipality? Is there someone outside of the PD that can help you with that? Thinking about training, I'm going to talk to you about training in just a minute, but you've got to really onboard the mentors so that they understand their roles and responsibilities. Documentation, Shannon touched on just a little bit, with her program that she has. Terry talked about what they're doing with Power DMS. You got to think about what that process is going to be like. especially if it's on duty time. You know, if you're having an accountability for time that you're allowing them to meet, if you're allowing mentors and mentees to match themselves, there's a process that can happen with some software on that. You know, how do the mentors find them? Or are you going to force everyone in your organization to be either a mentor or a mentee? The matching process, you know, for us at Nolly, there's, you know, sometimes we don't have someone in our database that's going to be the right mentor. So we actually have to go out and seek the mentor. We have to, you know, look through our member database and call someone and see, you know, you weren't on our mentee list, but would you be interested? Here's the situation. And then, you know, obviously thinking about what some of the stumbling blocks might be, you know, if there is a match that's not going well, how you're going to handle that if someone's not thinking about their obligation. So we've tried to research some policies, haven't had a whole lot of luck with that. If anyone does have any policies that you're willing to share so that it can benefit 30 by 30, that would be amazing. But all of those pieces, you've got to really sit down and think about it. You know, Tanya, you said you have it as part of your reform, and I'm actually glad to hear that they didn't set down exactly how you need to do it, because this now gives you the latitude to really think about how the program can work best for the agency under the mandate. One of the other things in this, you know, is really important, and Mo, it touches on your question about the civilians. Anytime I do anything with strategic planning or program development within organizations, I make sure that it's representative of the organization, sworn civilian, new to season. You've got to have everybody sitting at the table or it can fail. Talking about what's important to your agency members. So we developed a survey within Nolly to help some of the departments that were thinking about doing an internal mentoring program with a series of questions of, you know, the attitudes of agency members about that. Some of the questions that we're mulling over, you know, do they want to be matched with someone inside the organization, outside the organization, someone within a specialty field, or would they be okay with a you know, sort of crossing over any of the matches in terms of race or gender? You know, is that important to the mentors or the mentees? Making sure that it's free, you know, from the politics and personalities. Talked about, you know, what's being tracked. People need to know that up front, that this isn't going to be revealed to anyone what they talk about during their mentee process. And again, making sure that if you assign someone, that they're given the latitude to do the work. We all know that people get additional assignments placed on them all the time. In order to have a successful mentoring program, you really have to make sure that that person is allowed the latitude to be the coordinator. So many agencies now with safety and wellness are putting aside a specialized position for that. Might not be practical or possible within your organization, but you really have to make sure that if it is ancillary duty, that there's time. I'm going to switch over to the training slide, but I'm going to break to let Shannon fill in any of the thoughts and considerations that they had at Noblesville. You share some of those, how to get over those potential obstacles or thoughts that she has in that area.
I was actually in the chat, Kim, and one of the questions was on all mentors and supervision command positions. And I think the answer to mine is no. I find most in Nolly are. So I think it depends on what your program is set to do. If you're assigning a mentor right out of the gate when someone joins, you know, and they're going through the academy or they're going into field training, I find that my mentors that are supervisors actually have the least amount of time for that. So I've scaled back, and like I said, I focus on the officers with a good attitude that can go find answers to questions if they need it and things like that, and are trustworthy and really want to stay involved and have that positive attitude. For Nolly, yes, most of the requests we get are for career advancement. And it's exactly what we talked about, which was my problem coming into my obstacle was I don't have anybody that in Nolly we have a saying, you have to see it to be it. I didn't see it. I didn't see it in my agency. I didn't see it in my county. I barely saw it, in Indianapolis. It's just there were no females of rank. So a lot of the requests I get from mentorship for NOLI is they want a career path of advancement. So I will match a sergeant with if they want to be a lieutenant, I'll find a lieutenant. If they want to be higher than a lieutenant, if they want to be a chief, or to Kim's point, if they're looking to transition out, I kind of go up the scale to give them that person who has achieved what they're looking to achieve. And that seems to be the most beneficial.
All right. So just to sort of round out what we wanted to share with you. So we have the ability to do some on-site mentoring training that is supported by the Motorola Solutions Foundation. And the locations have to be within an hour and a half of Plano, Texas, Ithaca, Maryland, Westminster, Colorado, Chicago, Seattle, and either Salt Lake or Plantation, Florida. So if any of you are in those catchment areas and would like some free training on site, we can certainly help out with that. And we do have a bibliography of resources, and that will be shared out with the slides that Mo sends around to you. But certainly, we've tried to save a little bit of time at the end for any additional questions that folks might have. Shannon, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts before we ask any folks if they have additional questions.
No, mostly what Kim's saying. If there's any way NOLI can help or assist in any way whatsoever at your agencies, or just answering questions or sharing. Again, I took over the chairperson of our mentoring committee years ago, and I've worked through quite a few issues. But if you had questions or anything, and if there's any way we can help you, please reach out.
So just to kind of wrap up the thoughts on mentoring, I think we described a lot, but nothing is prescriptive. There's no single way to run a mentoring program. There's flexibility, but the important part is really thinking about it up front of what is your intentions with the mentoring program. Is it agency focused? Is it individualized focused? We can all come back and chat about different thoughts that folks have. I think the request to keep 30 by 30 folks engaged and connected to one another is an important one. I did see on the chat someone asking about the NOLI website. We could integrate that there, and through membership software, there's a way that there can be a forum and it can be segregated out for 30 by 30 folks as well. So I think, Mo, on that ongoing discussion, if we continue to share ideas, I think that would be great. I think when we limit it to something like a Facebook group, I know personally the only thing that I do on Facebook is NOLI and a little posting for a nonprofit that I volunteer for. So that might be a limiting factor for some folks too. But any other questions, thoughts, things that we need to answer for anybody today? All right, Mo, back to you.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Shannon and Kim. I was saying in our prep call yesterday that this is one of the areas where we get a fair amount of questions, particularly from agencies that are a little bit limited in terms of size and capacity, and just really grateful for the network that NOLI is building to be able to fill that gap, right? So for people who don't necessarily have folks that they can turn to internally,